Minnesota sports fans, we know all too well how it feels to sign up for a lifetime of purple pain. Welcome to Before We Die with Jesse and Thor on Purple Daily and Score North.
What's going on, everybody? This is Purple Daily's Before We Die on Score North Thursday edition. I'm Jesse Pierce, watching the Minnesota Wilds crush my dreams, my hopes, everything daily as a writer for NHL.com. That's okay. We are on board with your 10-2 Minnesota Vikings. He's Thor Nystrom. He's the one that's constantly feeding me the Kool-Aid, selling me the Kool-Aid, even when it seems absurd, even when it seems poisonous. Here we are, Thor, our positive person of the show. And we've got Ross Brendel over here. Ross has felt the pain, but this year, no more pain, Ross. No more pain.
Let's certainly hope that this no more pain train continues.
I like that. I'm a big fan of rhyming. That was good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's dive in, you guys. Your Minnesota Vikings against the Detroit Lions this coming Sunday, second time they are meeting this season. Obviously, Minnesota wanted Detroit to win, it seems, that last time that they met, but they pulled out the victory, so they got it. Minnesota winners 9 of their past 10. The Lions a grim 5-7, however, winners of 4 of their past 5. Jameson Williams, you guys, I want to start talking there for the Lions. It sounds like he's going to have an increased role this week. Obviously, we already know what they bring with Amon-Ra, but how do you think Jameson Williams is going to play into factoring for the Lions this week, Thor?
He's got to knock off some rust, right? I mean, he's been medically cleared and everything like that, but he hadn't played football since last December, January, or whatever, when he hurt his knee or whatever. You would imagine that he's going to have some rust. He's going to be acclimating into the NFL game or whatever. But I mean, his game he is so sudden and so explosive. That stuff you would think would be there, unless there's any lingering effects of this injury. But again, he's been medically cleared. He's a guy that we need to keep our eye on. And we'll talk about the illness going through the Vikings locker room soon. They cannot be compromised in the secondary, because that's a guy that can run by people.
I was going to say, let's go right there, because illness, the sick bug, rolling around that locker room. Danielle Hunter, Patrick Peterson, Harrison Smith, CJ Ham, all missing practice on Wednesday because of an illness. Darrisaw limited, still in that concussion protocol. Bradbury limited as well with a back. It does sound like Cam Dantzler should return from that ankle injury that kept him sidelined for 4 games, but you already alluded to it, Thor. Pretty detrimental key pieces on the defense if this illness is more serious and keeps any of these guys out on Sunday.
1,000%. Yeah, we can't be compromised in the secondary. Obviously, Amon-Ra, we talked about going into their last game against the Lions, but he's more of the efficiency guy, the move the chain guy. It's the shorter stuff and whatever, and he's very reliable with that. Jameson Williams gives them that downfield threat whenever he's at 100%. I'm not a doctor. I didn't say at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I can't say if he is 100% healthy right now or if he's 95 or whatever. But yeah, the thing you're scared about, again, it's that acceleration when he hits the gas pedal, because our outside cornerbacks in particular, they don't have that juice or whatever. That's just not their games, at least right now with Peterson, where he is in the progression of his career. So hopefully the secondary is close. Our secondary is close to 100%. Like whether it's Dantzler coming back, hopefully Peterson can kick this illness bug late in the week and we can have a full complement back for the first time in games and games.
The Jameson Williams thing will be interesting going forward for many years. This is the first of many subplots. He's always going to be tied to the Minnesota Vikings and that draft day trade. They'll think about that trade. Everybody will think about that trade, not only when the Vikings play the Lions, but just whenever Jameson Williams has a great game and maybe it helps the Lions within the division. So this is just the first of many subplots that I'm looking forward to. Again, I don't think we know how healthy he is, how comfortable he is within the playbook and game day. I would assume he's comfortable with the playbook, but just because it doesn't mean it translates to on-field success. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. The part about the Vikings defense being as close to 100%, I don't want to say it's laughable, but you do kind of giggle at it. Even if they are at 100%, are they really all that good? Does it make that much of a difference in the secondary?
There it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I know I'll catch negative comments in the comments section for those watching on YouTube, but I'm mainly just excited for the first time we get to see this Williams subplot play out.
But you're right.
I think I just called
did
him
have-
James. I think I'm going to just give him a new nickname.
You called me
James.
Jesse Peterson earlier, and I won't forget that ever. No respect at all.
I'm so
Jesse
sorry.
Pierce here, just host of the show for the past couple months, but
I'm so
it's
sorry.
fine. It's fine. Merry Christmas, Ross.
And you don't hold grudges at all, do you?
Thor's just thrilled it's not me ripping on him. It's on someone else so far today.
Just keep it on Ross.
You know what? It's my job. Keep bringing it.
Keeping you honest.
Don't just bring it, Jesse Pierce. No,
will.
don't just sing it. Bring it.
I did want to touch on the Vikings defense. We've been very critical of them all season long for the most part. And Detroit can throw the ball. They have 6.8 net yards per attempt. Vikings defense ranking 22nd with 23.3 points allowed per game. Third in yards allowed, 4,784. And the Vikings have allowed more than 400 yards total offense in each of the past 4 games and more than 450 in 3 of 4.
Ugh.
So, yeah. What do we do about that? Again, I mean, Detroit is coming in hot. They are coming, they're out of the playoff picture most likely, but Minnesota's feeling a little overly confident about that. It's been called a t-shirt and hat game, alluding to the NFC North Championship. And our boy, Jalen Reagor, guaranteed a victory. But it's not going to be that easy, especially with this Vikings defense and the Vikings' proficiency for dramatics and close games.
I love that. 2 days ago, I was doing Rieger Meagers for the folks out there. So I got my new mnemonic device now. I'm going to switch off the pronunciation. I love that he had 1 reception in the last game, and now he's become Joe Namath with the proclamations. It's absolutely fabulous. But I'm happy that someone came out and said it. And hopefully he knows that his teammates that are ill right now are going to be healthy.
He's also this guy. You guys, Mark Messier. Shout out. I have to hang this. I've been meaning to hang it for months. I've had it for like years.
Are you going to tell the audience that I knew how to pronounce his name before the show?
Thor did know how he knew how to pronounce this. This is a legendary New York Ranger who guaranteed a victory in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, or maybe 6 to force Game 7. One of the 2.
Mr. Hockey, Thor Nystrom, ladies and gentlemen.
Guaranteed it. Yes,
That's
I'm
right.
proud of you, Thor. Sorry
Thank
to
you.
interrupt, but I got the prop out. It was ready, so I needed to use it.
No, 1,000%. Yeah. I think, a key for the Vikings in this, outside for the defense, outside of just being healthy, right? Like, because we don't know with some of these guys being sick, and that might be playing into the wonky Vegas line that we can talk about in a little bit. But the key for the Vikings, I think, on defense in this game is getting heat on Jared Goff. Right. I mean, like their receiving core, it's still not above average for the NFL, even with Williams coming back in his first game. It's not a strength of theirs. The Vikings have to get pressure on Jared Goff. They can't just allow him back in the pocket, picking them apart like that, especially if the secondary's compromised. So I think that's the big key here.
I don't think we've talked about him nearly enough, and I've noticed some of our viewers in the comments have brought him up. Duke Shelley. How do you think his performance has been? How do you think if he does need to step up, obviously with these illnesses, how do you think that's going to fare? And is Jared Goff going to take advantage of that?
Maybe, but Duke Shelley's been solid. Like I've been happy. I mean, you have to be thrilled with what he's given you because you got him for free off another team's practice squad, and then you elevate him up. He had that enormous pass breakup at the end of. I'm blanking on which game that was, but when he had was it the Bills game? I forget. When he had the enormous pass breakup in I think it was against Dawson Knox in the end zone at the end of that game or whatever. He's played really solid for what he is. A guy that had to work his way up, and again, that was just a practice squad guy who has only been elevated up to this position because of the circumstances around him. Duke Shelley for sure has outplayed Andrew Booth, if nothing else, as a cornerback just on the field this year. Of course, he doesn't have the ceiling. And then him and Evans have probably been reasonably close if you just look at a per play efficiency standpoint or whatever. So I'm less concerned about Duke Shelley being on the field than, for instance, I would be if Andrew Booth was, because Andrew Booth just ain't ready yet.
And this is actually the type of game where, for as much discredit as we want to give Ed Onatel, because there's no D in Donatel, or we can just call him E Onatel, whatever you prefer. This is the type of game where his defense can help a little bit because those safeties are going to play so far back to help keep everybody in front of them. And it may come down to, okay, the Lions did score 24 points, but 18 or 15 of them were on field goals, or however that math works up. And if the Vikings can get to 24 points or north, then maybe they can feel comfortable that they will win this game. But this is actually a game where if the Vikings are truly as sick as we think they are, and they'll be without some players, and we certainly know they're injured in the secondary, this is actually the type of game where I think you're okay with giving up a lot of yards if you can truly hold teams to field goals and maybe force a turnover here and there. If you go back to midseason last year and then through this year, Jared Goff is playing really good football, maybe even the best of his career, which is saying a lot because he did in part help lead a team to a Super Bowl. But Jared Goff should not be discredited in how well he is playing. And I certainly know the Vikings are taking that seriously. So I'm really looking forward to the game on Sunday. I think this game can go a multitude of different ways. I don't really have any idea what to expect from it, other than I certainly hope the Vikings get out of Detroit with a division championship.
I mean, Vegas certainly thinks they know what to expect of it. 2.5 favorites. Last time that a team was favored over the Vikings that we disagreed with was Dallas. They were 1.5 favorites. Thor, what's going on with your Vegas people?
Vegas was right about the Dallas game.
Vegas
by the way.
was right about the Dallas game. I don't want to say, it's didn't go our way. Do they know something? I mean, was it the illnesses? What do you think is factoring into your Vegas friends putting Detroit as the favorite?
It's got to be the combination of the first game being super duper close when that was in Minnesota, the illnesses, and just the way that the Lions have been playing, the momentum, and then probably a little bit of the perception that the Vikings have, the thing that annoys us all with the media says that the Vikings have been like lucky or fortunate or whatever. I think it's a confluence of those, but I think the illnesses, it's playing an enormous role. Like that was sort of, earlier in the week when we were talking about this, when the line dropped, it was like, that's kind of weird. I don't know if those guys were ill then, but like you said, like Vegas always knows. So like, if all those guys can't play that right now have the flu, the Vikings are in a bit of trouble here because you can't lose your two best guys in the secondary. You can't lose Danielle Hunter, and the list goes on there, and be viable in this game against a team that's playing so well. But assuming that the Vikings are even close to full strength, I think this line is off. The Vikings should be favored, but I just don't know if those guys will be healthy on Sunday.
Thor, we've talked about this before, but breakdown, for myself, I have a pretty good understanding of it, but I think a lot of people who are listening and watching don't really have an accurate idea of how Vegas or people such as yourself come to a consensus or set lines. So if it's possible, can you dummy it down or put it in layman's terms for just exactly how a sports book, how Vegas, or how somebody like yourself formulates what a line for a game is?
Yeah, put it in Jesse terms that I can.
Well, so for instance, in college football, I make a power rating for every team where I stack them 1 to 131 because I do the FBS teams. Just a qualitative measure, right? And then with the power rating, you're just deducting the team that's lower from the team that's higher to get a discrepancy of the spread, and then you add in the home field advantage. Vegas is doing something very similar to that when they drop the opening lines, and then baking in some of the context of what they know about the injuries and how they're expecting the market to react to it. After that, it's basically the market's game. Only on the opener are you sort of betting against the book. After that, the market is informing what the line is. And so in some ways, you're just betting against people that disagree with you, if the line gets pushed this way. And this appears to be from where it was in the open to getting pushed to 2.5, it appears that, the market's behind that or whatever. So that's why you're seeing this line movement is if people are betting on the Lions.
Send me a private text what your line and thoughts are on the Pinstripe Bowl on December 29th between Minnesota and Syracuse for those who may want to put a few shekels on the game. But
by the end of the show, I'll get my line for that game.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm more interested. What's the line on Ross passing you in this week's Thor's Hammers? And is there a line also on me staying atop of Thor's Hammers? I'm gonna
get clowned on both sides.
Is it time for Thor's Hammers? Should we get there?
Yeah.
Let's roll.
As long as you don't put up the standings.
Do the standings.
Well, actually, last week or earlier this week, we had our first negative person attacking the Sounders, in which I don't think I responded to him. But for that person, here's your open.
Thor's Hammers.
Everybody loves the Thor.
I suppose we have to show this too, don't we?
Whoop whoop.
Well, now Ross, you're excited because you caught me last week.
Yeah, good week. I might
see
Thor. I'm coming for you, Pierce.
I'm curious to see if Ross goes with his Costanza strategy again, because last week it worked like bonanza. So I mean, like,
I'm not backing off. There may be a deviation like there was last week, but I'm not backing off.
Okay, well, we begin where we always do, the Kirk Cousins passing yards. This time it's higher, which in some ways makes sense because both these defenses give up just a metric ton of yards. Kirk Cousins' passing yards has been set at 275.5. Jesse, as always, we begin with you.
Under.
Dang it. I wanted to say under, but I'm going to go over.
I'm gonna go over too and fade Pierce. Our next one is the Dalvin Cook rushing prop, which is set a little bit higher than it was last week. Still under 80 though, 75.5. Jesse, over or under?
He was under last week, right?
I think he was over last week.
Did I pick whatever I picked? It was not that.
Yeah.
You said what was it? 75?
75.5.
I mean, if I'm gonna go over.
Okay.
Dang it. Last week I felt good about doing the opposite from you. So far, Jesse, these first two.
I get better each week, baby. I put more thought into it, try to figure, like, obviously I have to pick the over if I think the throwing yards is gonna be less.
I think this one's tough no matter what. Dalvin is always, even in his advanced age, is always liable to break a big run and take it all the way to the house. But I'll go under, and part of the reason actually for going under, even though I don't really believe in it, is still the share that he has with Madison. So I guess I'll take the under, even though I don't fully believe in it.
I apologize. I made a big error in Monday's episode. I did not give a shout out to Madison for his touchdown celebration. I've seen that celebration before. It's a whole TikTok where he grabs the leg, pretends he's injured, right, and then busts out into the twerk, and it's a good one. So
I'm gonna go over on Dalvin too.
Thor and I are the prudes of the group. I don't
understand the TikTok in general.
I did not love the thrusting in the end zone.
Well, that I was okay with.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
I'm going to go over. Delvin ran really good against Lions last time. He had 17 carries for 96 yards, and his long carry was only 13 yards. He still averaged 5.6. So was gashing him a little bit without the long one. I'm going to go over on that one. Last individual. Are you good?
You just no mention, just straight back into the show.
I didn't have anything to add to the TikTok. I don't know. It's just
I'll say this
world.
in the
it's like with hockey.
In the cleanest way possible.
Yeah.
0, you know what's given by 4 on that.
100%.
The overs of Thor not giving got there on that one. The Justin Jefferson receiving prop 93.5. Jesse, over or under?
Over.
Over, okay.
Under.
Ross, yeah, okay.
Under.
You're going under?
I should have picked under, but
would you like to switch it?
Nope, I committed.
Okay. I'm going to go over as well. I expect this game to be an offensive bonanza. I'm going to give a spoiler alert on my total pick here. Now to the line, which was at 2.5. What I'm seeing now is 2, at least on the sports book I was looking at. So we're going to use the 2 line. Jesse, Vikings +2 at the Lions. What's your pick on that one?
I'm going Lions. Sorry.
Packer fan.
I was actually going to take the Lions because logically, again, I maybe it's because I'm still a doubter. I don't see the Vikings going 15-2, and I think they'll fare pretty well at home the rest of the year. But I can also still buy how the Vikings win this game. I don't think it's a huge ask. I do think it can be a difficult game, but I don't think it's a huge ask, and it's not certainly in a super difficult environment to play. So I'll take the Vikings.
This is a weird one, right? And you guys mentioned the last super weird line, like, when the Vikings were at home and they were underdogs to the Cowboys. And obviously the Vegas was right on that one. The market was right on that one. Before the show, I texted a buddy who's the managing editor of Lions Wire, my buddy Jeff Risden, and asked him what his opinion of the line was, like if he agreed with it or not. He said the odds make 0 sense to me. I could see even maybe. And this was despite him knowing the run that the Lions have been on, and despite saying the Lions defense has improved since the first time around. I'm gonna take the Vikings in this one. The only way that I think that this one goes south is if you have numerous inactives because of illness. If I knew that was going to be the case, then I would lay the short amount of points with the Lions in this one. But I'm just going to assume that those guys will be back and on the field. So I'm going to take the Vikes. Last one, the point total of this game, a bit higher than some of the ones that we've seen recently, because those ones have mostly been in the 40s. We got a point total in this game of 52 points. Jesse, over or under?
I don't do math. That would be over. Over.
I was told there would be no math.
I was told there'd be no math.
Well, what's your score? Is that what you were doing in your head? Toss out your score.
35-25.
Oh, okay.
35-27, maybe. One score game. Yep.
Okay.
This will be where I deviate. I agree with Jesse. This is free money. This is going over.
I'm going over as well. Yeah. This feels like a defense optional game where the yards and the points are ubiquitous.
Good. Then we all either get the point or we all either don't get the point. Great.
We all die together too.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I like that. That covers it, Thor?
That covers it.
All right, let's roll to this.
Comments from YouTube.
All right, here we go. Our first comment. This week I went with one serious and then two that are a bit more lighthearted that I think you'll both appreciate. This comes from D. Sam. Love the Vikes, but they are 1-2 against the only really good teams they have played. And the one win was very lucky. Don't get so hyped up on the Vikings and take one game at a time. The Vikes need to improve dramatically to win in the playoffs. My question and thought off of D. Sam's comment. I like the comment. Thank you for the comment. But it is also approaching mid-December. How much can a team realistically improve in December?
I mean, yeah, I think it's a great point. I do think for sure all of those points are accurate. They are 1-2 against really, really good teams. That one victory, I'm assuming he's referring to Buffalo. I don't think it's easy to, I mean, you know what your team identity is. You know what your team is made of at this point. They faced adversity. You know, this is a very fourth quarter squad, which is good. You know, they're ones that like to come down to the wire. So I don't know that they can improve. You want them to, right? You want the defense to get better, but I think at this junction of the season, you probably are what you are, which for me, I still don't know what it is. I know it's a 10-2 team and I know that's good and that's about it. Like, I don't know if I see them as a deep run team. I don't know if I see them as true Super Bowl contenders because I still haven't seen like what I need to see. Say it each and every week. My purple hat on, let's go. Yes, they're there, but my realistic heart is like, I don't know. I just don't know. They're a weird case, a very unique case to me.
Before Thor responds, I'll hop in really quickly. Jesse, I agree with that. I'm not saying that the Vikings can't go on a run and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I'm just still not convinced that they can either. Yeah. It's a very weird spot to be in this far into the season. Thor, can the Vikings still improve in December?
What's this fella's name?
D. Sam.
D. Sam, this is a bad take of yours. I'm sorry to say. One good team. They've beaten the 9-3 Bills, the 8-4 Dolphins, the 7-5 Jets, the 6-6 Patriots, the 7-5-1 Commanders. Am I missing anyone? And by the way, deduct a loss from all those teams if they hadn't played the Vikings because they were stuck them with one of those losses. I don't really get this idea that the Vikings have played this paper-mache schedule and just gotten lucky. Last year, did anyone get – okay, I'm not going to go on this rant right now because I need to save it for my before we die. This thing fires me up about the people with the one-score game and just ignoring the context of the rest of it. But I need to save the juice for the before we die because I got thoughts.
Poor D. Sam
it's a bad
listens
take by D.
to
Sam.
us. He's commenting on YouTube, and you want to shred the poor person. D. Sam, I thank you kindly for the comment on YouTube.
Thanks kindly. It's just a bad take. Like I got to tell it like it is.
Oh, you just saw my teaser there because I double tapped the button.
Oh boy.
Skunk fishing. This goes back to what Thor talked about with the, I believe, snowblower style Roomba.
Yeah.
Skunk fishing
Do
says,
people like that? We in?
I mean, we have a Roomba sized lawnmower that will do all the work for you. So I'm sure it's in the works. If so, Thor, have you hired your legal team yet to get some of those royalties for the Roomba snowblower contraption machine thingamajig?
Well, I feel like if someone out there, if they're smart enough to execute the thing, I feel good about their heart and doing the right thing. You know, at least call it the Thornba, even if you don't want to give me any royalties. Like
The Thornba.
yeah. And as far as this lawnmower deal, I didn't know that existed, but I got to get that thing now.
No,
'Cause I don't like doing the lawn either.
I love mowing the lawn. It is my
Yeah.
favorite chore.
Who loves mowing the lawn?
instant. I do.
Oh.
It's instant gratification. You see the lines and you're
Oh,
like,
Jesse,
oh my
air
God, it
nuts.
looks
Lowest
so good.
gratification.
Oh,
I
Jesse,
love
I'm
it.
with you.
Yeah.
I love work
you, a
that you can see
groundskeeper?
getting done.
Oh yeah, and I use a push mower. I ain't on a rider. I just like pushing that goddamn. Oh, sorry.
Is your push mower self-propelled though?
No, it's. I mean, yes. We just got.
I draw the line. The mower needs to at least move itself for the most part.
It is self-propelled. It does make a difference. We have a pretty big backyard, so it's helpful. But it's my favorite. Plus, you're outside in the summer. It's nice. Like I'm just a
Now-
huge fan mowing the lawn.
Now that I know your address and know you're walkable from me, I plan to creep on
Just
some
creepy, but
barbecues and
yes,
all that
yes,
fun stuff.
Just creepy. It's fine.
You know,
All right, well, Jesse, it's your turn. Gregory Heyman. Jesse is now a 49ers fan since Purdy is their new starting quarterback. LOL. Jesse, are you actually done with the pack?
I mean, unfortunately, I guess so. Brock all the way. There's a good nickname rolling around for him. He's got some cojones. I am excited for Brock Purdy.
Family show.
So,
Look it up on your own time.
yeah, it's worth a look. Not sounded terrible.
Is it, Jesse?
Is it? I don't know. But Brock Purdy, I am excited for him. I am also nervous for him. That's a tough spot to be in, to be tossed into the fire in December for a team that still is kind of within reach and still within striking distance of making something happen. But he's a cyclone. We adapt. We succeed. We come out of the fire pretty well eventually, or out of the windstorm, rather.
maybe not this season, but
Excuse me?
maybe not this season for the Cyclone. But
Nebraska.
I'm going to beat you to your own bit just because I want to make somebody annoyed. I need a win to get into the fantasy football playoffs this week.
Obligatory fantasy football mention.
I was going to do it earlier. Jared Goff was once upon a time my fantasy quarterback in
Obligatory fantasy football mention.
that one guy's going to be so upset.
Jared Goff was like prior to the Lions.
Yeah.
He was brutal for the most part of his
Yeah.
Rams tenure.
I still won. I can't remember.
Well,
Still pretty good.
let's do this and get out of here.
Time now for the Before We Die crew to give us their Before We Dies.
I
I'm going to
still
start
can't.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I still can't beat Chipotle. Like every week I rack my brain and I can't beat Chipotle.
Yeah. And mine's super easy and sentimental. I say this every year. The caveat is I'll do it for New Year's Day, and I've had 2 opportunities and have not done it. I always say at some point I will go watch the Gopher football team in a bowl game. And the Pinstripe Bowl was one of my favorite middle tier bowls. I would love to go, but not quite in the budget. But my Before We Die is that at some point Ross Brendel will attend a Gopher football bowl game.
That won't be fun. The Pinstripe Bowl.
Yeah, you want to bankroll it for me, bud?
But let's both go.
You want to bankroll it for me, bud?
Well, let's just road trip.
Let's all do
It's
it.
in New York.
Yeah.
It's like,
Hop
does
in.
the Megabus go to Manhattan? Let's check that out.
100%.
My adjusted line on that game, by the way, is Gophers minus 6.8. And the last time I saw the line was Gophers minus 6.5. It is close to Syracuse, but I even baked in a small home field advantage for them. So if they didn't have that, my line would have been over 7.
Syracuse will travel well for that game. Gopher fans for bowl games traditionally actually do travel pretty well, but that's also to warmer climates. But New York at Christmas time, for those that can afford it, probably a pretty nice place to be.
Probably
So that's
really
what I
beautiful.
got. Who's next?
Do we know if any Gophers are opting out of that game?
I haven't seen anything yet.
Okay.
Your guy Braylon Oliver, he'll never get a job in this town. He's entered the transfer portal. Who's next?
That's you can go first.
No, because then you're going to close with something awesome. Actually, I like that. I want you to close with something awesome because I have nothing at all this week. Before I die,
you'll hang up that Mark Messier.
Before I die, I will hang up my Mark Messier. Literally like 3 years. I've had it for 3 years in this bag. I keep thinking I will finish my woman cave downstairs with all my sports memorabilia and all my paraphernalia and all that stuff downstairs, but I haven't finished it yet, and it's turned into a disastrous toy room for the children. So Messier is up here with me, one of my favorite hockey players of all time. Signed, sealed, delivered. I will hang it up before I die.
I feel like Messier needs to be downstairs with the Messier of toys.
I see what you did there.
Thank you. I'll see myself out.
That was good. All right. Well, mine is, I'm going back to my previous rant, so just time me in on that. I'm getting so annoyed about this Vikings one-score narrative. The Vikings are lucky because of that. And then also forgetting the context of the strength of schedule, which we can talk about in a second. But as far as the one-score thing, some knucklehead on Twitter put out a thing of like, oh, if all the one-possession results were flipped, the Vikings would be 1-11. Or, I think 1-11. And it's like, well, yeah, if you did that last year, the Vikings would have been one of the best teams in the NFC. They lost 8 or 9 one-possession games last year, but there was no one out there with violins for the Vikings saying like, oh, this team is way better than their record and Mike Zimmer should stay. No, losing in situational. What's that?
It's got to be the little violin, right?
Yeah, the little violin.
Yeah, big or little.
I love that we're playing violins and Thor has no clue because he never looks at the screen.
I never look at the screen. I never do. But nobody was arguing that Mike Zimmer was this really good coach and the Vikings were just getting unlucky. And, the next year you should bring him back because obviously they're going to flip around on the regression curve. You got rid of Zimmer just like Nebraska got rid of Scott Frost. Last year, if you would have done this with Nebraska in the regular season, I think either goes 12-0 or 11-1. They were certainly going to the college football playoff in this ridiculous universe where you switch it around on the one possession games. It's this idea that pretends that situational football and winning at the end of games and stuff like that it's not important, that it's utterly frivolous, which we know is not the case, right? Like switching from Zimmer to O'Connell is the reason the Vikings are doing so well in these games. And even just speaking to the context. So the Vikings have had the 9 one-score games. In 5 of the 9 of them, the Vikings had a higher than 80% post-game win expectancy. So it's like the Vikings are outplaying these teams as well, right? And it's a good schedule. They played a really good schedule. I just ticked off all the teams that they have beaten that have winning records or would have winning records if the Vikings hadn't beaten them. And now the schedule lightens considerably. The last 4 of the last 5 games, I think, were against current playoff teams and a bunch of good defenses. I think 5 of the top 6 DVOA defenses. These last games that the Vikings have way easier than that. So hopefully they get healthy, because once the Vikings get healthy, I think that's when they're going to get scary again. You got to understand they haven't been playing with Darrisaw. They haven't been playing with Dantzler. There's been games, obviously, like we know, where Duke Shelley has had to play a major role, where Andrew Booth had to start one of them, where Caleb Evans has had to start. Once his team is back to full strength, it's a whole different ballgame. And the narrative of the one possession game thing is utterly ridiculous.
Jesse, permission to amend my before we die.
I give it. I sign it off.
Permission granted.
We will put a time limit on Thor's before we die.
No,
so I was gonna say, I'm like, it's a half-hour show, bud.
Actually, I will say this: the highlights of this show, it's not me, it's definitely Jesse and Thor. But Thor takes it to another level when he goes on his rants. They're pretty
so
good. That was a good rant, Thor. It's not going to beat the Chipotle or the Roomba rant. But
still, no update.
Done.
Oh, no, I'm going to give you the final update when I got it. We're working on it.
All right.
Yeah.
Like that.
He didn't hire the legal team for the Roomba, Jesse. He hired the legal team for the Chipotle points.
I would too.
But I'll keep him on for the Roomba thing if there's money to be made for the Thorma.
Thornball. You gotta love it.
Oh.
Again, this is Purple Dailies Before We Die on Score North. I'm Jesse Pierce. He's Thor Nystrom. He's Ross Brendel, bringing you new takes, hot takes, fun takes each and every week, Mondays and Thursdays episodes. That's it for this week. Go Vikings. We'll see what happens.
Skull Vikings.
Hannah Penn.